So let's talk about renaming quantifiers. And before we do that, I kind of want you to take a look at these two statements, okay? And I want you to convince yourself that those two statements actually say the same thing. So the first one says that for all x, if x is greater than 2, then x must be greater than or equal to 3. By the way, the domain of discourse here is the integers. Otherwise, that wouldn't be true. Okay. The second statement says that for all y, if y is greater than 2, then y must be greater than or equal to 3. Despite the fact that we changed the name of the variable, we're still saying the same thing, right? If some number is greater than 2, then it must be greater than or equal to 3, right? So one thing that we could do is we can characterize that by saying this, that those two statements are actually equal, right? They're either both true or both false. It happens that they're both true. But one of the reasons of writing it that way is that our idea that we've been using all this time, which is to replace equals by equals, kind of works. And that gives sort of a justification for the renaming. I can rename the variables because in fact the two statements that happen are equal. All right. So yeah, that's an approach. Okay. So let's see. This is how we're going to rename variables, and this is very technical. Okay. So be careful. It sounds trivial, but actually there's a few gotchas. And this is something that you really must learn to do pretty much with your eyes closed, okay? So pay very close attention. Let's say that I want to change the variable x to y in this particular statement, which is qx, where q is either for all or there exists, we don't care, body of x, y, z, okay? So here's what we'll do. Step one, we'll change the quantifier to be qy, right? So for all x, simply becomes for all y. This is step one. Okay, that's great. That's easy. Okay. Then what we have to do is find all the occurrences of x in the body, and it's actually only one occurrence of x in the body, and again we're going to change that to y. Okay, but this rule is very important. Suppose there's another quantifier that also names x somewhere in the body. If we get to that, we simply leave that entire section of the expression alone, okay? Because otherwise, we'll essentially be capturing that quantifier and it'll become something that we don't want it to. Now, in this case, we didn't have any problems, right? There were no other occurrences of x, so we're perfectly fine. Okay, now here's a different one, all right? And we have for all x, even x, or odd x. So how do things change? Well, again, we're going to take the quantifier and we will change the x to a y. That's pretty easy. The only difference is that this time there are two occurrences of x, and it's very important. We got to change both of them, right? We can't just change one of the x's to a y and leave the other one, right? Then we don't get the same expression. All right, let's try in here. And so again, we'll move the x to a y, right? And we find the occurrences of x, and we change them to y's, okay? Except in this case, what we have is a complete, total, absolute disaster, right? Notice that y greater than x turned into y greater than y. Y greater than y is simply false. So something really has gone wrong. And it's pretty easy to see what's gone wrong. Notice this, there exists a y. Well, we were trying to change x to y, but there's already a y, right? We cannot do that, okay? So that's why we have to highlight this. We must change x to y, where y is a new variable. You can never rename to an existing variable. If you do, you are playing roulette with a gun that has no empties, okay? They're all bullets. You are just simply going to fail. So don't do that. It's just a bad idea, okay? So let's try this. One of the ways that I could have approached that last statement is I want to go from x to y where y is a new variable, but I already had a y. So the first thing we're going to do is just change that to z, okay? So the quantifier changes and all the occurrences of y change. Now I can change x to y, okay? Because now y does not appear in that expression. So I can actually do that, right? I could have just gone from x to z and that would have been a new name. But the key point is that I must always be choosing a new variable. Here's another example that illustrates one of the things that I was saying at the very beginning, and that is what happens when there's already some other term that has that, a quantifier. So here we have for all x, and we're changing x to y. So we take the quantifier and we change the variable, and then we look for all the occurrences of x in the body. But when we reach here, this is off limits, okay? And the reason it's off limits is because of there exists an x there. So that's basically saying this is a different x than the one that's present outside. If you come from a programming experience, just simply think of having a function inside another function. And there's an x on the outside and an x on the inside. They are different x's because when you declare the inner one, you're obscuring the outer one so that you can't reach it. Okay, so that's what's happening. So there's only one occurrence of x that's actually bound to that quantifier. So that's the only one that changes.